Okay, let's face it. There's this one universal thing, right? This full stop waiting for all of us. It's the journey we're all on, but we often act like life just goes on forever.
Yeah, we kind of push it to the back of our minds.
Exactly. So today, we're diving headfirst into that very thing.
Yeah.
Death. It's biologically certain, sure, but how we think about it, react to it, well, that's way more complicated.
It really is. And what's fascinating right off the bat is that split. You've got the biology, the physical end,
Right.
and then you have this huge human layer grappling with meaning, what it implies, even just defining it.
Yeah, defining it, that's key.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to unpack in this deep dive. We've looked at a range of sources to try and get a handle on this, multifaceted thing.
The goal being to give you a solid, but hopefully digestible understanding from different angles.
Because it's not just medical.
Yeah.
It touches our psychology, our beliefs.
Philosophy, art, even technology now. It's a huge landscape.
So we'll look at the biology, what is death physically. We'll touch on grief, fear, how cultures see an afterlife, maybe.
And the big philosophical questions, how art portrays it, how tech is changing things.
It's a lot. We're approaching it with, well, sensitivity, but also real curiosity. So maybe the place to start is that basic question. Biologically, what is death?
Seems logical.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's not as straightforward as it used to be. Medicine's really pushed the boundaries.
Right. It's not just, heart stops, breathing stops, the end. Not anymore.
Not always, no. Because we can artificially keep circulation going, keep breathing going. That forced a big rethink.
We had to look deeper, beyond just those outward signs.
Precisely. We had to start thinking seriously about brain function.
Okay, so walk us through the different ways death gets defined now. Our sources mention clinical, brain, and legal death. What's the difference?
Okay, so clinical death, that's sort of the classic one. Heart stops beating, breathing stops. Circulation and respiration cease.
But the key thing there is,
It's potentially reversible. If you get immediate help, like CPR, there's a chance. It's a critical medical emergency, basically.
okay, got it. Reversible, potentially. So brain death sounds different, more final.
It is, yeah. Brain death means the irreversible stopping of all functions of the entire brain. And that includes the brainstem.
The brainstem being the really crucial part for basic life functions.
Exactly. Breathing, core reflexes, stuff you don't consciously control. So if the whole brain, including the brainstem, has irreversibly stopped, the body just can't sustain life on its own anymore.
Then what causes that kind of catastrophic, irreversible damage?
Usually it's things like severe head injuries, a major stroke like a subarachnoid hemorrhage,
Yeah.
events that cause massive pressure inside the skull.
The intracranial pressure.
Right, that pressure builds up, cuts off blood flow, cuts off oxygen to the brain cells, and that's it. Irreversible damage.
So even if machines are, say, pumping the heart, keeping the lungs going,
Yeah.
if the brain is gone in that total irreversible way, that person is brain dead.
That's the medical and legal understanding, yes. And diagnosing it isn't taken lightly at all. There's a strict set of criteria. The 3 pillars, they're often called.
Okay, what are those?
First, coma. Complete unresponsiveness, no reaction to anything.
Okay.
Second, no brainstem reflexes. They test things like pupils reacting to light, eye movements if the head is turned, the doll's eyes reflex, coughing, gagging, those involuntary things controlled by the brainstem.
So if those are all absent.
That's pillar 2. And the third is apnea. That means the person makes absolutely no effort to breathe on their own. They do a specific test to confirm this safely.
Wow. That does sound incredibly thorough. Very specific checks.
It has to be. And importantly, before they can even make that diagnosis, they have to rule out other things that could look like brain death.
Like what?
Things like severe metabolic problems, drug overdoses. Sometimes you have to wait for drugs to clear the system. Severe hyperthermia, really low blood pressure.
Things that could temporarily shut down responses.
Exactly. And even conditions like a persistent vegetative state or locked-in syndrome where there might be some brain function remaining, but the person appears unresponsive. It requires careful differentiation.
Okay, so clinical death, potentially reversible cessation of heart, lungs.
Yep.
Brain death, irreversible cessation of all brain function. Where does legal death fit in?
Legal death is the official declaration. It's when a doctor formally says this person has died. That's what allows a death certificate to be issued, legal processes to start.
And that declaration can be based on?
It can be based on either the old standard irreversible stopping of heart and lungs or on the newer standard of irreversible stopping of all brain function, brain death.
And that inclusion of brain death,
Yeah.
wasn't there a specific act related to that, the UDDA?
Yes, the Uniform Definition of Death Act. That was really important, especially in the U.S. It followed work done back in '68 by Harvard and then a President's Commission in '81.
And what did it do?
It basically created a standard legal framework. It said, okay, states can legally define death using these neurological criteria, brain death.
Why was that so necessary?
A big part of it, honestly, was organ transplantation.
Ah,
If someone was brain dead, but their heart was still beating because of machines, were they alive or dead? Could you ethically take organs? The UDDA provided that legal clarity. Death could be declared based on brain criteria, allowing organ donation to proceed ethically.
that makes a huge amount of sense. It avoids that incredibly difficult gray area.
It does. It helped provide clarity, closure for families sometimes, and a framework for doctors. But it's important to say not everyone everywhere agrees with the concept of brain death.
It's still debated.
Oh, absolutely. There are philosophical, religious objections or questions. It can cause real distress for some families, especially when machines maintain biological functions. That appearance of life after brain death is declared.
It really just highlights how complex this all is, doesn't it? Even the definition. That table in our source materials comparing them is pretty useful.
Yeah, that comparison is great. It lays out the key indicators, reversibility, diagnostic signs, legal status, causes. For clinical, brain, and legal death side by side, really clarifies the differences.
Okay, so that covers the definitions, more or less. What about the actual process of dying?
Yeah.
The sources suggest it's usually gradual, not like flipping a switch.
That's generally right, yeah. Unless it's a very sudden event, dying is usually a process, a gradual shutting down of the body's systems.
And the details vary, obviously.
Of course, depends on the illness, the person's health, any treatments. But there are common patterns, signs that tend to appear as someone gets closer to death.
And this is where hospice and palliative care really come in, right?
Yeah.
Understanding this process to provide comfort.
Exactly. Managing symptoms, supporting the person and their family through it. So now we know what death is, legally and biologically. Let's look at how the body typically approaches it.
Okay. Our sources break it down by time frame, weeks before, days before, the last day, final hours. Let's start with weeks out. What changes then?
Often, in the weeks before, there's just a general slowing down. People get more tired, sleep a lot more.
Energy levels drop.
Right. Appetite and thirst often decrease, too. The body just doesn't need as much fuel. You might see some weight loss, skin getting thinner. Maybe they talk less, withdraw a bit socially.
Okay. Then as it gets closer, say, days before, what becomes more noticeable?
Then the changes are usually clearer. Breathing patterns might change, become irregular, faster, then slower, maybe shallower.
Sometimes that rattling sound.
Yeah, sometimes fluid can build up, causing a gurgle or rattle because they can't cough as effectively. Circulation changes too. Skin might look pale, grayish, maybe blotchy or mottled, especially hands and feet.
Temperature changes too.
Can do. Extremities might feel cool, but they could still have a fever. And because less oxygen might be getting to the brain, you could see more confusion, disorientation, lots more sleeping, sometimes even hallucinations.
It really sounds like systems are winding down. What about the last 24 hours?
In that final day, yeah, sleep often takes over most of the time. If they're awake, maybe just brief periods, minimal communication. Though hearing is often thought to be one of the last senses to go.
Interesting. Any other signs?
Sometimes there's a little burst of energy, briefly, but mostly the earlier signs intensify. More skin mottling, blood pressure drops, swallowing becomes difficult or impossible. Less urine output, maybe loss of bowel or bladder control. Sometimes restlessness or agitation can happen. Breathing gets harder, more congested perhaps.
In those very final hours.
Yeah.
Just before the end.
Uh-huh. The decline continues. Breathing gets very irregular, shallow. Long pauses between breaths, maybe gasping, that Cheyne-Stokes pattern sometimes.
Right.
Skin feels cool, clammy. Pulse gets very weak, hard to find. Eyes might look glassy, teary, maybe stay half open. Usually consciousness is lost by then, but often there's a sense of calm, a peacefulness reported in those last moments.
It does paint a picture of a letting go and the actual moment of death.
That's marked by the heart finally stopping permanently, and breathing stops completely. Brain activity ceases very quickly after that.
The observable signs.
No pulse, no breathing, no response to anything. Skin looks pale, maybe waxy. Pupils are fixed, don't react to light. Mouth might be slightly open, often described as peaceful by those present.
It's quite powerful hearing it laid out like that. It kind of demystifies the physical process a bit, which can feel scary and unknown.
I think so. Understanding the biology, what's actually happening in the body, can sometimes lessen the fear around it, both for thinking about ourselves and for people caring for someone who is dying. It highlights it as a natural end to the life cycle.
Absolutely. Well, we've definitely taken a first step into the biological side of death. And it's clear, even defining it isn't simple.
No, it really isn't. And thinking about all this, especially how definitions have changed with technology, it raises some big questions for you listening to this.
Yeah, definitely food for thought. As you process this, how might your own views, or even our society's views, on life and death need to adapt?
What does it mean for end-of-life care choices? For how you personally might think about your own mortality? What does it actually mean to be alive when we can separate brain function from other biological functions?
Deep questions. And ones we'll definitely keep exploring as we look at the psychological side, the cultural aspects, technology, in future deep dives.
For sure, there's a lot more to unpack.
So for now, we hope this gives you something to reflect on. Thanks for joining us for this look at the biological reality of death.
We look forward to exploring more with you next time.